Okay, great. And so today we're going to look at the broadband maps. You should have received, all the team leaders, a set of the maps that Reed has prepared, and he's going to go through those and share those, and then do a demonstration of the Tennessee broadband mapping system that is publicly accessible and a very valuable tool for community planning. It more and more GIS skills and access to GIS technology is more important to broadband planning than ever. Over the last several years, as states and the federal government have funded broadband projects, that map has gotten a lot more complicated. In years past, there were whole counties that were considered unserved essentially, and so it's much easier to put together projects without regard to which areas were eligible or not. And so, but now as the eligibility has gotten more complicated, the real emphasis by funders not to duplicate funding where an existing network may be in place has gotten to be important. And so the mapping is really important. So if you can get some mapping skills on your team, our team here, led by Reed, is always happy to help, but I think the system allows you to download layers into your own county mapping systems and so on. And so that is just combined with your addressing systems and tax information, really can be more powerful tool when implemented locally. And then Donovan Span is here with us today too, and he's Reed's colleague at the Office of Broadband. So they're going to tag team this presentation. And so, gentlemen, good morning and welcome. Thanks for your work.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy that we can move this up. Happy that we're able to get it all ready in time, and excited to get going. So here, I'm gonna try and share my screen really fast. Everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Great. All right, so basically what we're gonna go through is I have pulled some maps for each county and put it in a slide deck that I sent you all, so you all have access to that for reference after the presentation and as we go forward throughout the program. And so we'll go through those, kind of explain that, take a 1,000-foot view of each county and the broadband data that we have available on the state map, and explain that briefly. Donovan will give some context on the funding side, to the extent which we're able, how the maps influence the grant process and the funding process, and he'll also fill in areas which I miss because I'm no map whiz. I am very self-taught in this area. Haven't been working with GIS for very long. Kind of just have used the client side map to pull these maps. So I'm learning with you. So excited to get going. And then after that, we'll kind of go, I'll just give a brief explanation and tutorial on how to use the map for yourself. I'll just share my screen on the browser and show you how to do everything, and hopefully that'll give you some confidence to do it on your own time and kind of generate your own resources. So let's go. This is just a link to the map for your own reference. It's just in the slide deck. And now, so I have every county we're going to go through. We'll just going alphabetically, starting with Bedford. This is just summary statistics that are in the map that give you the percentage of, 10-1, so 10 up, 10. Sorry, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think there's somebody in the waiting room.
Oh, thank you. Oh, is there? Not seeing one.
Adam Wilson.
I don't think he's in the waiting room. I think there was a breakout room when I first logged in. It was showing Claiborne. I think he's clicked on that room and he's in the no man's land now.
Let me see.
He's in the Claiborne room.
He doesn't know how to get back. He's trying to get back, but can't get back. I made the same mistake. I had to just close the whole app out completely and come back.
Yeah, I think he might have to rejoin. I can't pull him back myself. So if someone could relay that to him, that would be really great.
I'll text him separate and tell him just to close the app out and get back on the grouping.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
That. Okay.
Sorry,
yep, sorry about that. No, you're fine.
You have to watch the waiting room now.
Yeah, please stop me if there's issues. I know Teams is a little bit tricky. Great. Yeah. So this is just summary statistics that when you search by, I'll show you how to do it when we do that tutorial. But this is just, you know, percent 10.1 unserved at 10.1, percent 25.3 unserved, and so forth. Just giving broad overview of the percentages that are covered at each speed and those that aren't covered at each speed. And then we'll go through, there's Adam. We'll go through each map. So this is just unserved, and we'll have this for every county, like I said. The light red is unserved at 120, which is the new broadband standard set by NTIA. Dark red is unserved at 25.3. So those areas would be prioritized in the new federal guidelines, as they're not even at 25.3. They're now just completely unserved. And go forward. Here's our DSL coverage. And that's the darker the purple, the higher the speed. 10.1, 25.3, 120. You can kind of see there, and that's just for DSL technology, the speeds at which those are being delivered. And here is all 25.3. So this is everywhere in the county that has access to 25.3. There's no granularity there in terms of speed. There's no darkness, variability. It's all just 25.3. So most of the county here has access to 25.3. 120.
Does that include all technologies?
Yes. All fixed technologies. So not wireless, just fixed, I believe.
Yeah, it does include fixed wireless, but it does not include non-terrestrial wireless. So what's excluded from the map is mobile wireless, like 5G coverage and 4G and satellite. So your Viacom, Viasat, Usenet, that's not on the map, but everything else is.
And now we're on to 120, which, as you can see, clusters more around Shelbyville, kind of branches out. There's some more areas of unserved at 120. And then even tighter and smaller, we have a little bit of granularity here with gigabit service, this is the only, we have this same data for 25.3 and 120, which shows the density of providers. So the darker the green, the more providers. There's a legend that tells you exactly what it is. It might be green means 3 or more or something like that, that provide 1 gigabit symmetrical service. But the yellow means there's just one provider, and then darker than that, there's more providers in that area offering gigabit service.
We have a question here from Bedford County.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first off, Van over here has a question, but I just want, can you put the very first map up again?
Yep.
Can you put the very first map?
This one, right? The unserved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. There's been some funding already come to the county. Have some of the entities already blocked out some of these areas for expansion?
So are you asking if if the map is reflecting future build out.
Round 2.
Yeah, yes.
I don't think so. Correct, Donovan? So this is just current, or when they did the data.
That's correct. This is current as of November of last year. Now we do have one scheduled update before June 30th. So anything that is in progress or anything that we are able to do outreach and receive updated data for will be reflected on the map. And as we get closer to launching our programs as well, we're going to ensure that at least those counties that we consider to start have previous awards removed from them as eligible areas. So not currently, but it is a plan to get that done before June, and if not, before the end of the year.
And I believe there are map layers too that document where funded projects are added in. Is that right, Donovan?
There are layers. I'm not sure if they have included the TBF ARP as a layer. I think this is predominantly just coverage. So yeah, so that is a plan to get those in there and taken care of, but I don't think as of right now that
I think maybe USDA Reconnect is in there, some stuff like that, but not the state grant.
Okay.
Yeah, awarded RDOF is probably in there, USDA Reconnect, CAF at or above 25.3, which isn't much. So most of CAF was 10.1. But as far as the EBF ARP awards, this is just current as of November.
But thank you for your question. That's a good distinction to make. That the map will change going forward as we update it, and more grant projects get funded and are progressing.
Good, and I think we do have somebody from Reed now.
Okay.
We have just one more question.
Don't see anyone.
Okay, go back to USDA Reconnect grant. You said something of that nature, that it would be updated, or what do you say about those funds?
Yeah, so the only USDA Reconnect grants are on the they're a layer on the map that can be added, and I can show you that when we do like the walkthrough when I share my screen on the map itself. Those grants the funded grants are a layer on the map that can be viewed. The grants the state grants, so TEBF ARP grants, which is the state grant program, though the grants that aren't haven't been completed yet, or built out, they are not yet on the map. So those will be updated as the construction is completed.
Reed, Bradley Taylor is listed as on hold on the participant list.
Okay, here you go.
I don't know what that means.
What?
Final question.
Try to let him know.
Yeah. Who's the contact person for USDA Reconnect grants through Rural Utility Service? Who's the USDA person? Do you have a contact for that in Tennessee?
We do have that contact. I don't have it off the top of my head. I can get it to you though. That was
good.
That was for Bedford, just the USDA Reconnect.
Yeah, and that'd be a state contact. I'll get that during the meeting here.
Okay.
Their website. And so let's Reed, could you just say 1 minute about how the data is collected for these maps?
Yeah, Donovan, why don't you go over that? I think you'll be able to give a lot better context to that than I can.
Sure. So the very high level overview is our broadband accessibility map is comprised of a conglomerate of data. This map started about end of 2019, early 2020, so it's gone through a couple iterations at this point. At that point, we were still using, FCC was still requiring the use of Form 477 data, which would have been from the 2020 census at that point, so already slightly outdated. We also used public-facing data, so USDA Reconnect maps, RDOF maps, CAF, all of those, any federal funding, any state funding data that was available. And then the big kicker is what got us our granularity here. We contracted for this map with Connected Nation. Connected Nation dispatched people into the field on our request to validate whether that was new builds, existing builds, previously challenged builds from grant areas. So we actually had boots on the ground in Tennessee mapping these wireline assets and these underground assets to a T. They were mapping to the pole, they were mapping to the end of the line. So while this map doesn't show asset locations in terms of DSLAMs or in terms of splice points, this gives a sort of buffered overview, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, a snapshot in time of what's available right now.
Right.
So due to NDAs, we're not allowed to say, hey, here's so-and-so's network and here's where all their assets are, right? That's a security risk. That's against state regulations, so we're not allowed to do that. But what you see on the map is what Connected Nation was able to procure for us. So they do outreach in addition to actually being in the field. They will reach out to every provider in the state, collect their data, say, hey, here's what we're doing. Your data is protected under NDA. Everybody has a very good relationship for the most part with the outreach team. That goes pretty well. And then that comes in as an update also. So while we haven't been able to do that under this contract with Connected Nation since November, we do plan on incorporating some new data before the end of June.
Great.
So just one question. I know, Reed, you also assembled the list of providers that are currently serving these counties. Given what I've just heard, are you sort of allowed to give us their service territory in these counties?
Yes and no. So what they allow to be public on their website, depending on the provider, is what we're allowed to show, depending on what the NDA, whether it's fully exclusive or if it only excludes certain things. The map actually does have a search by address tool. So you can pull up an area in Bedford, zoom into a particular address if you'd like, and then what that tool does is show you any providers that are at or above 10.1, which should be all of them at this point. So 10.1 for that address. So it'll drop down a list and say, hey, you've got AT&T that's offering fixed wireless. You've got these, Ben Lomond Connect. You've got these companies that are in the area. And if you click on them through that tool, I believe it shows you a rough highlighted area of their service territory, but I'm not sure that it goes as far as disseminating between provider A and provider B's territory. This is, like I said, this is a comprehensive, a conglomerate, kind of everything mashed together. Okay. So I think it's stuff that we can get, we can probably speak to and suggest on, but I'm not sure if that is NDA protected data or not.
Yeah, and we'll show that address tool when we do the walkthrough. Great,
thank you.
So moving forward here, if we don't have any more questions, this is just FCC registered antenna structures, which Donovan notes often isn't the full picture. He has explained to me in terms of fixed wireless structures because what is it, 100 meters, Donovan?
Yeah, it's 200 feet.
200 feet.
So FCC registered towers are above 200 feet. These are typically your high power transmission sites. These are your mobile towers for the most part. You're driving down the road, you'll see 3 arrays of mobile stuff. All mobile providers, for the most part, are doing a fixed wireless portion now. So if AT&T has a tower, they just throw fixed wireless gear on their tower. But what you run into is not being able to see the full picture, because a lot of fixed wireless providers go out, slap up a 190-foot tower with a 5-foot antenna, don't have to report it. So these are above 200 feet vertical assets.
So that was Bedford, and now move to Claiborne. And I know it can't do much in terms of deep analysis here since we're going through everyone, so we'll just kind of keep moving so we can get to the tutorial. But here's your summary statistics once again, and stop me again if you have questions. Claiborne unserved. And this was an interesting one to me, given the kind of stark difference in served and unserved areas here, in terms of the western part of the county just having a line through it.
I can explain that real quick, Reed.
Yeah, please do.
If I may. That stark contrast on the western part of the county is geographically cut off from the rest of the county.
Understood.
They receive their utilities from La Follette Utility and Powell Valley Electric. Our fiber provider is not able to go in that spot, just like that one little square down there in the southwestern part of the county. That's being serviced by La Follette Utility District. So that's why you have the stark contrast there.
Understood. Yeah, I figured that one of you would have an answer like that, given such an extreme contrast. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
And here's your DSL. Again, this is only DSL, so those speeds are only indicating DSL speeds. 25.3. Here's your 120, which is basically the same. Everywhere that has 25.3 has 120, more or less.
Reed?
Yep.
Sorry, Bradley Taylor's, he says, can you move me back to the Roan room? I don't know where he is.
Yeah, the Roan County room, sorry.
To be put into the breakout room?
Yeah, I need to go back to the Roan County room. Somehow they cut me out or cut me off.
Well, so I think there's some confusion here. So you can't really so we're either in the big room together, which you're obviously in, and then we can't really just put you in a room with them in their on-site meeting without you. That's a separate place. So they're in the big room just as you are.
Yeah.
And so
but I'm part of the Roan County team, so I mean.
Yes. So when we break into our team rooms, then we can connect you to the Roan team.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
You can't go in there. I mean, if you went in the breakout room, you'd be by yourself. So instead of with all of us.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving forward here. Now we're on the gigabit, and that's where we get some discrepancy here of moving away from the 25.3 and 120. Like I said earlier, it's a density map. Darker green indicates more providers providing gigabit service.
Rooms and different things like that.
And then here's the fixed wireless structures, AC antennas. Claiborne. Move to Decatur. We'll just kind of fly through these.
Hi, everyone. If people are in the group setting, could they mute their microphones so your side chat doesn't disrupt from Reed's presentation? Thanks.
Decatur summary statistics. Here's your unserved and underserved map. So Decatur, lots of unserved and underserved areas, kind of branching out from Parsons and Decaturville, excuse me. And then you see the inverse here on 25.3, and then 120, and then gigabit. DSL is at the end here. That's my mistake. And fixed wireless. Monroe, summary statistics. Again, stop me if you guys are wanting a closer look at any of this, but you have all the information in your email, so you can look closer later. unserved and underserved, DSL, 25.3, 120, moving out, gigabit. Here's your fixed wireless. Then on to Roan finally, summary statistics. This was a harder in terms of the boundaries and the way that the shading all worked out. It's kind of hard to see the lines, but there's your unserved, your DSL, 25.3.
Reed, can you go back to the first slide for Roan with all the percentages?
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh, the percentages, is that the people that have service or do not have service?
So you have 10.1, the first percentage on all of the speeds is those who have service. So 98% of people in Roan have at least 10.1. And then there's 253 locations that are unserved. So only the first number is a percentage. I've been kind of misspeaking there. So percentage and then locations.
I got to doubt on 95.5% of this county has 25.3 speeds.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair. Yeah, fair criticism.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these were estimates that CN provided us based on the map and provider feedback as well. So there are some discrepancies in these numbers, but this is, again, if there is a provider in the area that is available to serve at or above a particular speed, then they're added into the percentage. So it's not necessarily saying that 95% have the service, but 95% have access to the service somewhere. And that's probably a closer number, and it's probably a little lower, but for the most part, it is important to remember that these are all estimated numbers. And these will change too as we roll updates out.
But Donovan,
so Donovan, let's be clear about that. What you're suggesting is that there is a provider in the area that's going to give people, 95% of people, 25.3. It doesn't mean that they've subscribed. That's one thing. And also, this is about the fact that they could get you service, not that they do give you service. That's the way these maps are reported. So when you do the surveys, you're going to find out, because people will tell you whether they're subscribed or not, and they'll do a speed test, right? So that'll give some granularity to these figures once you do the survey data. But this is never about what people are subscribing to, only what they have access to.
That's correct. It's sort of a mixture of both, because you know, it's hard to imagine 100% participation in a survey. It's hard to imagine 100% customer feedback on the map. So we received, goodness, I want to say close to 500 feedback results from our map, and the predominant amount of those were from Cumberland area, but it's all good feedback, and that's added as an internal layer on our map, which after Reed's finished and we're trading roles, I will speak to and show. It's not something that's going to be on the external facing map. It's more for review side, but we've actually taken some of those survey results and visualized them, and actually color coded them. So these are the ones that say these speeds aren't active. These are the ones that say there is no service here. So when Connected Nation is running their numbers and running their estimations, imagine, if you will, a box in your mind. Draw a line through the middle of it. That's a provider line. That's fiber. That's DSL. Doesn't matter. That is a service. If there is an end of line, if that hard terminates at this pole, they will run a service buffer of X feet, depending on the technology. So here's the end of the line, and they are serving along this line. So they run a service buffer, which encompasses the theoretical end of line capabilities. So since the FCC has moved towards location-based data rather than census data, you now have serviceable locations, served and unserved locations. So if there is a location that is within the service buffer of the service line, or within that fixed wireless area or anything, then they are chalking it up to serviceable. So there is the ability to be served at 95% with 25.3. Now, he showed you the DSL coverage. DSL is obviously copper. That's phone. That is older technology. The theoretical capabilities of VDSL2 go to about 100 by 40, roughly, and that's depending on how long that wire is ran. You know, speed degradation happens the farther along the line you get. So there's a lot of statistics that go into this, and so it is important to remember. Like I said, this is an estimated number based on 10 plus metrics. So we do understand that it's not 100% of your county that is covered or able to be covered. But like I said, as we continue to roll out our programs and get some of that data back from previous applicants, we should start to see a more granular level on the county-based side.
Hey, Donovan.
Bill, you're on mute. I think Ken has a question.
Yes.
We have a couple. First of all, Brad Taylor, I was going to let him, and then Mr. Gabriel has something, but Brad?
Yeah, so what I was getting ready to say to Donovan, to your point is that, you know, DSL is a waning technology. So, you know, I speak from the AT&T world because I worked here for 35 years. You know, they're in the process right now of rolling out a program to absolutely eradicate and eliminate DSL altogether. So they're going to be migrating those to cellular connections. Because the cellular side of the world is so much more ubiquitous than the wireline side will ever be, you know, from a funding and coverage and all of that. So I think your point's pretty valid. You know, while the percent may say it's 95.52%, I think you got to be relative to understanding that there's multiple technologies available to people as to whether they pick and choose to subscribe to and agree to to the rates and the terms and the conditions. That's really what's more prevalent, I think, than the fact as to whether you have or you don't have quote coverage for an area.
That's absolutely right, Brad. The majority of our issue that we're seeing on the digital equity and opportunity side and the BEAD side, the broadband side in general as a whole, is adoption. You know, a lot of providers have the mentality that if we build it, they will come, and you don't receive service through osmosis. Just because that line runs in front of your house, you don't get that service unless you connect to it. And they're depending on demographic. You know, you have folks that would rather pay an arm and a leg to a company that has better customer service than the company that has higher speeds but no customer service, or the company that's less reliable, they'll pay double to somebody else because, you know, they treat them right. So you've got different mindsets as well towards adoption. So that's absolutely right. I mean, there is wireline available, there is fixed wireless available, but, you know, you can lead a horse to water. So.
Well, and I think the other thing is, real quick, is my last point is that I think the use for broadband internet, and I don't care what flavor it is, I put in cellular data internet, not fixed wireless, but cellular data. I've got probably installed over 600. I'm probably closer to 700 of them now. But you know, I see the trend is changing completely from what the application and the use is. You know, in the 5 years ago, 10 years ago range, everybody wanted to talk about, well, it was everybody trying to get online and they were trying to access education content, and they were trying to be able to do Social Security, you know, online and all this. The trend is now moved where 90% of the use now is for streaming TV programming and is for online gaming. So there's a big difference in what what is available and for what functionality, and I think that's something that people have got to understand. You know, 25.3, you can stream programming on it. It's not going to be the greatest, but you know, you've got to ask yourself, what is it you're trying to you know, acquire? Are you trying to be able to stream all your TV programming, or are you really trying to use it for educational or work or remote work from home or whatever purpose? I'll shut up.
Yeah, and there's a lot that goes into that too. You know, I came from Connected Nation. Don't tell anybody. Shh, keep this quiet. But I actually worked on this map. I was one of the people that was in the field and was doing some of the work. So I actually come from the digital divide. You know, the people that we are aiming to bridge those gaps, I live right in the middle of. So I know what it's like to have a 1.5 by 768 fixed wireless connection. I know what it's like to have a 12 meg package that you cross your fingers and hope and you may get 7 on a good day. You know, so I certainly know that, and there does seem to be some sort of disconnect between what you actually need and what is offered or what is honestly offered. You know, I do know that there are providers that not necessarily are dishonest, but will just assume give you 100 or 200 package and try and push that towards you, even if you only have one person in the house or 2 people in the house that are, you know, that are using an active connection. Depending on what you're doing, you know, you can have 4 or 5 people at a 100 connection, as long as they're not all downloading and uploading simultaneously. If you have a house full of video game streamers, that's going to get sucked up really quickly. If you have a house full of people watching the news, that's not so quick. And there's a lot. One last thing, and I'll shut up and turn it back to Reed. There's a lot that goes into that as well, because if you have a 4K television, for example, and you have a streaming platform that allows for 4K upscaling, your bandwidth just went up. Your throughput requirements just went up, much more than a 1080. You know, much more than a 720. If you go and change it to 480, I bet it's the fastest you've ever watched a video. But at that 4K speed, you need a much higher connection for video gaming and everything as well. Telehealth is a big one. Telecommuting to work is a big one. So certainly on that digital opportunity and equity side, the literacy aspect and the understanding of what it is that a person needs is going to be one of our focuses in our programs.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was really, I mean, the understanding that the map is not the end all be all, and that all of these other things go into it, and the map is a reference and will change over time, and needs to understand that, yeah, it's an estimate from a lot of different metrics, and that you know, we at the state level understand that, and we know that you guys are, when you see that it says 95%, it is understandable that it's that raises some alarms. So no, by all means, not the end all be all for funding and things like that. But run through here really quick, and then we can get to the demonstration portion. And Ken, I see your hands raised, so go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Glenn Gabriel has something.
Yep.
Rowan County here, we've heard you and we've listened to, you know, you all's explanation going through those numbers. So what, and I guess you had answered it as you were closing, what you've actually given us is a starting point with those numbers for us to improve upon.
So those numbers are what is being reflected in these maps that I'm showing you.
Okay.
That's, like Donovan said, a snapshot in time from November is when that data was collected. And so it's an estimate on those numbers. It's not your exact situation. We know that there's discrepancies. It's like it's fine to look at it as a starting point, because it's a starting point not only of where you are, but it's a starting point of the information that you have available to you. You can go and gather more information, and that's what we're going to go through with the survey and these kinds of things.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct, Reed. I appreciate that. These are based on legacy data, as well as data that we've collected from providers, as well as if there was any in-field work. Now, we didn't have boots on the ground in the entire state. We were more focused on grant awardee areas or publicly challenged areas. When we do a closeout package, we may progress through the county quite a bit more. But for the most part, these are estimates based on how all of the data combines together. And as we do a presentation on some of the map features later, you'll see that these layers do change, and you'll go from seeing a hard polygonal area or more of a line data area to some of the stuff that you're looking at here, say around Loudoun and south of Oak Hill, around Philadelphia area. Some of those could be fixed wireless areas. You know, a propagation study is a heat map from the center of the tower out, based on geography, and it's not going to fill in all of those topographical features. So it's going to leave these little holes and these little Swiss cheese looking items. So it's not, and it's not all wireline is what's important also. There is fixed wireless that is included in this, if any. Just not mobile wireless and not satellite. So if there is a provider like AT&T doing fixed wireless, that's on here. If there is this is Texas, but a Resound Networks that's doing a fixed wireless, that's on here. So that's why you get kind of these choppy looking polygons on here.
Thank you.
All right. And here's your 120, kind of ran through this already. Your gigabit service. And finally your FCC registered antennas. And I think the last slide on here is just your telecom local exchange providers. So your telephone providers, just for reference.
So Reed, again, I want to make sure I understand this map. All of that sort of peach color, that's all Bell South, even though the lines are running different ways?
Yes.
I think so. It sort of has these very light twos, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, it's the federal map, and yeah, again, I'm not an expert on this, so this is just the publicly available data. But yeah, that's how I understand it as well.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
AT&T area is what it is, ma'am.
Oh, thank you so much for clarifying. I should have asked the guy on the phone.
No, that's okay. But that is, yes, ma'am. That is all Bell South area.
Bell South, yeah. All right.
Yeah, because this
the
is
original.
2002. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Some of those names are changed, but yes.
Exactly, to protect the innocent.
Great. Okay. So let's stop sharing here. And Donovan, if you want to go over the funding side, if you have anything more, if you don't, that's fine too. We can go into the map itself.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you kind of a brief overview of what we're getting ready to do with the map and sort of what the map leads into. So this, among other data sets and other licenses that we have procured and that we own as a state, go into deciding our grant areas. In particular, you all know we've got BEAD coming up. We've got DE money coming in as well. Those are separate buckets, but kind of in the same vein. So on the BEAD side, we're going to do 2 programs, and I can only speak to what I can speak to. So if I'm very vague or very short, just please allow me to be. We are doing a last mile program with a middle mile component, and we are doing a middle mile program with a last mile component. So both of those are going to be 70-30 grant match, and they will have different things involved, but they are both launching along the same timeline. The last mile program, we are going to identify, or we have already identified, but those names aren't public yet, 1 county from each region. So big surprise, we're going to have an east, a west, and a middle Tennessee region county selected. Each one of those counties, based on need, will be divided up to 3 areas. So potentially 9 applications. It's not a reverse auction, but it is going to be an all or nothing. If you apply for an area, you must claim every location that's in that area. It's sort of a do it all in this decided area or don't. And with them being non-contiguous and divided, we are allowing, any providers to apply. It's your typical standard, competitive application process, but it is going to be based on several things, several scoring criteria, based on some of the provider feedback that we've received in workshops. We have slightly tweaked or at least elaborated to some of those scoring processes. We do plan on being as transparent as possible. We are going to do the challenge process ahead of time. So before the applications go out, we're doing a challenge process. that is going to be challenging the eligibility of those areas. So if we present an area and say, here's what's eligible, those providers, those customers, it's going to be challengeable based on what's eligible within those areas. Bradley, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, so let me ask a real quick question to that then. So is this then going to take into effect what we call franchised areas? So in other words, is there going to be applicants available to be able to bid on certain areas that they're, quote, not currently franchised in? So I'm just going to take a Roane County right now. You know, AT&T is franchised to operate within Roane County, and Comcast. There are a little bit of areas of Roane County that Charter is franchised in, but you know, everybody's going to have that a little bit. So my question is, though, is when you come up with this, you know, this bid and this process, will other service providers, so I'm going to say, for instance, you've got an area that Charter serves up to a boundary and stops, and then Comcast takes over, but yet Comcast doesn't provide service at the edge of that area. Would Charter then be allowed to be able to migrate into that, quote, non-franchised area?
So yes and no. So obviously providers are still going to be bound by their contractual and legal boundaries. So we understand that that includes electrical co-ops. We understand that that's going to include your incumbents more than your CLECs. We know that that's going to include a lot of that. Depending on the area and whether it is a extremely high cost area or it is a particularly typically underrepresented area, we're going to allow for any providers to apply. So even Charter or Comcast, but additionally somebody else could come in and say, listen, Comcast doesn't serve this side, Charter doesn't serve this side. We want to build to and through. Can we do that? And we're going to serve at symmetrical gigabit. So it's not encouraging overbuilding, but what it is, we are focusing on those areas that are lacking 100 by 20, and we are putting a high emphasis on the areas that are at 25.3 or lacking 25.3. There's a big gap between 25 and 100 in terms of speed, and there's a there's a large portion of the population that sits firmly between those numbers. They're not at 100, but they're slightly above 25, and those are going to be the areas of focus. Again, those areas will be, yeah, no problem, Brad. Again, these areas for the last mile program will be determined by the state, and we will be presenting those as, you know, ahead of time for challenge, public comment. After applications go out, after the typical application process, there's going to be another public comment period. So within both of our programs, there's plenty of time to challenge, plenty of time to comment, plenty of time to put your 2 cents in.
And when you say real quick on this, 70-30, then the state then would be providing 70% of it, and then the county would be required to pay the 30%?
That's correct. Okay. I think that's correct. Guidelines have not been finalized. They're still going through leadership, and our contracting team is going to start putting those together. So again, I can only speak to what I know, and don't take this as gospel, because this still has several steps to go through before it's public. And so I'm just kind of giving you guys a little taste. And
we have Taylor Beatty and our NTIA representative and our USDA Reconnect or USDA state rep in a few weeks' time. So we'll have plenty more opportunity to go into the state funding programs and such, and maybe by then we'll have more information to share. So.
And the match can generally come from the provider as opposed to the county, doesn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the maps and the demo so we can let folks look at their maps in detail and in their breakout rooms.
All right, everyone. So I have a few things to go over just to give us some general familiarity with the map. First off, we'll just kind of go over the panels. Obviously, the map here can drag around and zoom in and zoom out and do all that good stuff to get information you want. On the left-hand side, these are all of your layers. So you toggle them on and off with this little box, these tick boxes. So if I want to see areas served at 100 megabits down, 20 megabits up, click that, and that's what we're seeing everywhere. So pretty easy. And then you can, if you want unserved at 120, then you see both. Pretty simple, right? And that goes for all of these sorts of things. And one thing I've already done, and I'll toggle on and off, that just makes it kind of easier when you're looking at county level stuff. If you, these panes up here, so you have access, general, survey, and federal, those are all categories of layers. So access is all of like the broadband data, right? General is like general data. So you can look at if counties that are given the economically distressed designation, you can hit that and look at that. But what I've done is just scrolled down and clicked on county and county boundaries. So I wanted to see the county lines since we're looking at, you know, individual counties today. Toggle that on, and that makes it a little bit easier to look at things. Surveys, this shows survey responses, and then federal, this is where you can kind of, this is where we talked about the USDA Reconnect grant. So clicking that on shows you USDA Reconnect areas. And so that's the layers pane. Oh, I don't want that on anymore. So if we click on the unserved at 120 and served at 120, you can talk about the legend pane down here, which just shows you each layer that you have turned on. So I have served broadband at 120 and unserved at 120. It'll show you what the colors are and what it means. So obviously green served at 120 and red is unserved at 120. And that every layer that you click on will add a new element to the legend to show you what you're looking at. What else? If we're looking to find a specific place, you can an address or just a county. Like if we want to find Monroe County, you can find Monroe County, Tennessee. It'll take you to the center of the county, more or less. And then that you can kind of, or you can do a specific address and it'll take you directly there. Let's see what else. We can look at let's look at the export process. So if we wanted to kind of make an image here, we wanted to see, you know, roughly the entire Monroe County area. It's 120 capabilities or access. We can, this legend pane has another tab on it. It says export map to static format. Might take a second to load. But this would be if you were looking to generate like a packet like I did. I used just screenshotting, but this kind of gives you a better, you know, you can choose the size here for what the print is going to look like. So if we just want an A4 piece of paper, give us a PDF and then hit print, it'll generate the map that we're looking at in a PDF document. One sec. And then that'll finish and you just click on it and it'll pull up your map. And then it gives you a nice little PDF that you can print out and share around. Right, so that's kind of the basics. And then I know one thing that we wanted to look at was the broadband availability by address. So for when you click on it from viewing far out, it gives you these like, it's not super helpful, but once you zoom in to an area, it will show you the addresses that are served and unserved. So if we go back to the legend, it's 100. All of this is at 120. So the red is unserved, green being served.
Can you hover over one of those dots, Reed, and let's see what happens? There we go.
Oh yeah, so it gives you its estimate of if it has 10, 1, 25, 320. And
so again, no provider data here. Right, okay.
Correct. The provider data, like we were talking about with the search function, that is up here, this little Wi-Fi signal. If we want an address, or we can just do Monroe County again, really, it doesn't really matter. So it's just giving us the center of Monroe County right now, and showing us the providers that it thinks are available where we are looking at right now. So AirHawk Wireless and Verizon Wireless. And it has those speeds there, the advertised speeds. So it shows you every provider at the address that you plug in that advertises above 10.1, which, as Donovan said, should be all of them.
Yeah, it's also important to note here that these address level data sets were pulled from the address fabric, which if an address was not challenged, will still show whatever status it was showing during the initial tranche of the map. So if it was originally showing as a served area, but that area was a barn, and that barn was not challenged as, not being a residence, then it still shows up as served or unserved depending. So again, snapshot in time.
Yep. Right, so that I think kind of covers the basics of it. Again, really what you're to get specific information, kind of tailored to what you want, you're just going to be playing around with these layers on the left here, and adding in and taking out, and to figure out what information is most useful.
Sorry, Drew. I thought it would be good if we could to just show how the federal grant program. So I've just been messing around with Bedford County because that's my county. And I think if you get on and you click things like RDOF and USDA and Connect America, you see where federal money is being given to build out. And that to me is super helpful as people start to play around with these maps.
Sure. Yeah, so again, that to look at that sort of federal data, that's on this the layers pane over here, and you hit the federal tab, and you can turn on USDA connected community facilities or Community Connect funded grants. You can click on USDA Reconnect. Here, let's go. We want. Yeah, sure. We'll go Bedford. Give us the seat. So there's a couple. It's hard to tell the difference. Yeah. So Reconnect grants there. RDOF obviously adds in a whole lot more than USDA. And that's all on that federal pane.
And then the Connect America Fund really adds stuff. There you go.
Phase 2. Yep.
Right.
And so that all is those, like we were talking about earlier, these are just the federal funded areas. We don't have the state funded areas that haven't been built out. That's all just the snapshot in time data, but this is funded grant areas.
And then the other valuable thing when we talk about the affordability issue is some of the demographic data that's built into this as well. So, and
so
there's a tab there you can just go look and see the various educational attainments, and and that's U.S. Census.
Now we're getting it messy up in here, but as you can see, you can.
But it just helps to show that when you put different layers on there, how you can start to think about which programs you might be eligible for. So on, that are more demographic based. I see that Zoe has a question.
Yeah, you talk about challenge. Yeah, hold on. There we go. Okay, we talk about the term came up, challenge. You challenge a site, et cetera, et cetera. What is that? What is the process of challenging something?
So are you talking about what I just mentioned on the address level data?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay, yeah. So when that address fabric came out, the FCC allowed for that map to be challenged up to a certain point, and I can't remember how long that window was open for.
It was a really quick turnaround.
It was a really quick turnaround, and basically what they said was if you don't challenge it right now, it's not going to change. So while you can still and I'll probably find the link and get that in the chat if I can, but I believe you just go to their website, there's a click through a link much like ours, and there's a challenge process for that eligibility, or for that, hey, there's not a provider here, or hey, this address is actually unserved entirely. But I don't believe that anything that happens after that window had closed, which was a couple of months ago, probably, if not longer, will affect grant funding. So the map will change, and the eligibility of whether that is a served or an unserved location will change, but it will not affect the funding that the state gets for their grant programs. So the address fabric was used to determine how much a state was going to get based on total number of unserved locations. So that challenge process is very similar to any other. I think you just go on and say, hey, I'm at this location, or I'm familiar with this location. It is or it is not. Then they validate that and take your word for it and change it. But like I said, I don't think they're allowing for the overall picture to change. Just those individual addresses can be challenged.
And is this up here, Donovan? This feedback tab? That allows you to.
We've got that up there. It's also in the bottom.
Yeah. So that is where you can submit feedback to the state map. If that was helpful to your question as well. It gives you this form.
This is for our map and for our purposes. So if there's something on here you don't agree with, please challenge it on the CN map so we can see that data. If you go and challenge anything on the federal side, that doesn't come back to us. So.
Right. But look, it's important to challenge. A lot of states got very organized and challenged thousands of times. And there were two types of challenges. One is it a house? Look up an address, say your own. If it's identified as a house, great. If it's identified as, if you're not even on the map, you got to get on the map. What happens if an address was really an apartment building? Or what happens if your community anchor institutions were not there? So a lot of people have been adding that data because it's very helpful in terms of for the state, even though the Fed window has closed. The second thing was challenging the service you were receiving. So those were the two types of things that you could challenge. So Donovan's right about that.
Good, thank you. Reed, and Donovan, thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. And I encourage folks to spend some time. There's maybe some team members who are adept at that or like to do the analysis, love maps. So this is a great tool to use, and to find it, you can just Google Tennessee Broadband map and get the link directly from there. Like that.
I just dropped it in the chat there for everyone.
Good. And moving forward now, as we try and get in a habit of giving you time for your community meeting, and we'll go into the breakout rooms. And I encourage you to look at the maps and share those. And then I would also encourage you to look at the worksheet that Reed also attached. And just some discussion questions there for your consideration. What's your reaction to broadband maps for your area? How much is served with adequate broadband? One of the reasons I asked Reed to include the DSL maps is that DSL is extremely variable in the level of service that's provided due to either the equipment or the amount of bandwidth that's coming to what they call the DSLAM, the DSL access module, or the condition of the copper lines. You know, if you're on the landline talking and it's raining and you get all kinds of crackling, that means your line is really compromised, letting water in. And so a lot of people with DSL have, you know, the rain's hard, they can't use their DSL very well for a day or two till it dries out. And most of the time, with the CAP 2 funding that helped improve broadband services through DSL, the companies were really only required to deliver 10 down and 1 up for that. And so if you're very close to that access module, you can get you know, 25 and above. But once you're a mile away, 2 miles away, that service is going to be generally under 10 megabits service. So, but on the map, sometimes I think those services, that's probably the most, there's most slack in how those numbers were reported. And maybe those speeds are less reliable. And that's why when we do our speed test during the survey, that will become so important. Speed tests have their own reliability issues based on time of day and your own equipment in the house and things like that. But I think when we get hundreds of people doing these speed tests, the preponderance of the evidence shows kind of the overall quality of the service. So recognizing that people may be buying a cheaper service, but you know, frankly, if a company is offering a service of less than 25 meg, that really points to the ancientness of their network, right? Because anyone who's offering a cable modem or a fiber connection, or even these days almost a fixed wireless connection or a cellular fixed wireless, you know, those speeds are considerably higher, 50 megs and above and so on. So that's another indicator of the quality of your service. And so through this process, you're going to have a great picture of what's available in your community with these maps, with the surveys, and so on. So, so I think you can go through in the maps and see, you know, what does it say about competition, which offer the best opportunities for new broadband deployment. We can zoom into those address level kind of places. You can see where there's higher densities of people living that are unserved. I know some of you live adjacent to national forests. Maybe the population density is quite low in those places. You know, those might be the hardest to get the service to. Conversely, which are the most difficult to serve. And then as we think about moving forward in this process with broadband provider interviews, these maps can really help you develop your set of questions that you want to ask the providers. You can show them the maps and say, here's what you say you provide, but yet either that seems right or there's challenges to that. What are your plans for extending service, improving service, and so on? So those are all kind of things you can spend the next 45 minutes or so discussing. Think about anything else your team needs to chat about, the organization, members, how things are going to work. And just realize that as a new group, you know, there's lots of questions, lots of opinions. And I would just take time to consider those things and get a shared understanding of where people are coming from. So with that, Reed, I'll ask if there's any other questions. And if not, then we'll go, Reed will open the breakout rooms. People can join in, and I'll be around the communities to chat and see how it's going.
Yeah,
Hey,
and once
Bill,
again, sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, Reed, go ahead.
No, you're fine. This is just, I was just going to talk about the breakout room, so you go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to mention as well, because you guys may have seen it, but I don't think it was talked about. There on the bottom of the map, one of the boxes says query/locate, and then also has add data to the map. So if anybody has data sets they want to compare against our accessibility map, you're not giving us data, you're not uploading data to our server. It uploads it locally as a reference layer. So if anybody has any particular geographic or geopolitical data that they want to upload for reference, feel free to do that. You're not giving us anything you shouldn't. As soon as you refresh the map, that's gone forever. So feel free to utilize that. It's very helpful.
Good. And your own local GIS experts are probably, that's when maybe they need to be involved. So.
Okay, so I'm going to open the rooms. I apologize again, since I was presenting here. There's going to be a lot of people that I'm going to have to do on the back end, but hopefully most of you get assigned on the right here. So I'm opening the rooms now. And if you're in the wrong one, tell me. I'm still learning this dang Teams thing.